Rada Matai rolled up his sleeves, forearms slick with perspiration. Standing beneath his assistant's raised umbrella, the Sathi elite was protected from most of the night rain, but nothing could shield his dark skin from the pervasive humidity. Looming above, the massive shell of a mega-tower construction site beckoned towards the dark skies, its steel frame illuminated by the surrounding skyscrapers. 1 month, Rada spoke aloud, the nearby foreman scowling at his words. It can't be done. The beleaguered builder wrung his hands together, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and anger. E1CE will not allow us to block the side streets with our crane cars for enough time. We'll need to— I will deal with the bureaucrats. The suit and tie waved a hand as though the problem were no more than a buzzing fly. You need only push your workers as hard as the 1 month time frame requires. There will be injuries, deaths, sir. Working at that pace, under these conditions. Deaths? Matai almost laughed. We have safety protocols, do we not? Follow them. And if your workers cannot be trusted to clip their harnesses, remind them of just how many eager bodies there are in the heart, waiting with bated breath for any unexpected and sudden job openings. A bleak expression belying his true feelings, the foreman nodded wordlessly. He knew his own job was just as easily replaceable. Matai smiled, adjusting his tie. Feeling a hum from his device, he drew it from a narrow pocket. Boss lady, he answered, white teeth flashing in a broad smile.
Rada, 1 month?
A woman's voice, young and impatient. 1 month. They say there will be deaths. His smile did not falter.
When are there not? If the workers can't stop repainting the pavement, give them parachutes.
The woman on the other end of the line sounded in no mood for such a trifling topic. Don't be so flippant. We are not on the mainland anymore. Family connections can only get us so far here, Shiva. Matai admonished his superior with a confidence that did not match his station. Each lost worker costs us more than back at home. Your father will not take kindly to another set of sanctions from E1CE. Think, girl. Surprisingly, Shiva did not seem to bristle at her subordinate's words, letting out a light tongue click of irritation.
I tire of their pretensions. E1 is small, it's nothing. Why doesn't he just buy the damn platform already?
You know why. The letters P and T. Shiva clicked her tongue again, and Rada could imagine her beautiful face creased with anger.
On that other thing,
she began, her tone conspiratorial, but Rada cut her off. Not over device. We'll talk about it in person.
You're no fun. Come back now.
Shiva cut the line abruptly, leaving Matai back in the night rain of the construction site. He gave a curt nod towards his assistant, who led the way towards a classy cyan and gold cruiser. The rear door was opened, and Rada climbed inside. The driver, not needing to be instructed, revved the engine and pushed the vehicle up above the sweltering street, into the thinner air between the hemming skyscrapers and megablocks. Matai ignored the scenery, tapping at his device. His schedule was clear for the rest of the evening, but tomorrow would herald yet another round of bouts with E1CE, and, squinting under furrowed brows, his eyes focused on a single name, that of Lu Jing. The name burning an ominous brand upon an otherwise unexceptional calendar day. P-fucking-T, Matai hissed to himself, his driver picking up speed, the cruiser ascending above the mid-rise buildings. The gaudy flyer maneuvered between a pair of brutalist concrete blocks, windowless and Spartan in design. T&D holdings were bland and without structural weakness. Their drone-like workers would stare at grey walls all day, rather than risk the structural floor of a room with a view. Rada stretched languidly, lounging back into his plush leather seats. The Sathi group had no such inhibitions. If the world was large, then live large. That was the mantra of his boss, Shivani Saraf. A buzz and a flashing light. Another call forced a sigh from Matai's lips. Relaxation would have to come later in his private suite. He accepted the connection, the voice of Pratik Bal, Shiva's head of security, barking into his left ear.
Sir, they're here again.
Pratik sounded worried, though he scarcely ever was anything else. Which ones? Rod asked.
Not the elephant, thankfully. Just the buffalo and the pup.
Matai was immediately on alert, leaning upright. What are they doing? Are they with the tiger?
Not yet, but they asked to see her, and she gave them the green light.
Fuck, Shiva, fuck. Hold them off as long as you can. Make them fucking coffee if you need to. Do not allow them into the elevator until... Matai heard muffled voices, distant and confrontative. Pratik was evidently attempting to carry out his orders under duress. With a shuffle of static, the head of security's voice returned.
Sorry, sir. The tiger let them up.
God damn it! Matai ended the call, slapping his hand against the back of the driver's seat. Get me home faster. Don't worry about the fine. Go, man, go! The man at the wheel complied, pushing the cruiser through the rainy skies at dangerous speed. Radha Matai viewed his device, the name of the first contact on his contact list causing him to rub his temple ruefully. He briefly considered if it would be wise to bother Shiva's father at such a late hour, before deciding against it. The boss man had enough on his plate. Radha could handle his willful cub. Slumping against the backrest, Matai was carried down one of the gaping arterial channels of the fusion quarter, towards a massive green and cyan-lit tower that dominated the skyline. Raindrops spat off corroded awnings as a long monorail tram sped through E1, dazzling glass and hollow advertisements on every side. Brass, Monk, Turk, and Kumari had departed E1CE headquarters together, boarding a tramcar at E1 Berwick campus station, while chatting amicably to one another. By luck, or coincidence, Anik had been leaving at the same time, and joined their procession, promising to introduce the new task force to his brother, Zahir. Anik, one of Azul's backups, was now wearing the holster and trappings of a common street badge. To his evident relief, he had been fortunate enough to be assigned to patrol duty in the Fusion District, E1's safest and most affluent sector. I almost pissed myself when the assignments were being read out. I'd rather jump off the platform than patrol the belly, the Indian man chortled, clearly elated by his own good fortune. Fusion is the best posting by far, though I wouldn't say no to Kaifu. He positioned his ringed hands in front of his chest, miming ample bosoms. Kumari was staring out the filthy tram windows, drinking in E1 for the first time. Mega apartment blocks rose from the surface of the platform like SATA connections from a massive motherboard. His face bathed green in the light of a Sathi Group holo advert. The Sri Lankan put his forefinger and thumb on his chin. I heard they don't even bother to police the refugee district, the Broken Heart, he mused, tram shuddering slightly as it took a tight turn, weaving between two skyscrapers each stamped with a glowing pink Antoine PT. I suppose if they did, they'd need to arrest and deport almost everyone there. Where would they find enough prison space? Or boats? Hey, don't you mean we? We're badges now, the ones supposed to be doing the dirty work. Brass piped up, his eyes glued to the lights of the city, bright against the inky darkness of the ocean all around. I've got a solution. Pop 'em, drop 'em over the side. Turk snickered. Sharks will take care of the rest. She mimed a gunshot with her fingers. Fuck you, bitch. You think that's funny? Anik squared up against Turk, the shorter woman not backing down an inch. Yeah, I do. If those rats could stick to their own damn land, we wouldn't have wetback gangs running half the city, would we? She tilted her head to the side, eyes flashing dangerously. Besides, weren't you saying a chemical spill killed off all the sharks? Brass nervously tried to ease the tension by changing the subject, but Monk placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Don't get involved, mate." Anik pushed forward, his nose pressing into Turk's. "You don't know a thing," he snarled. Other commuters on the tram, already weary of the group of uniformed badgers in their midst, began to move even further away at his raised words. "My brother came here smuggled in a crate of sex toys. He worked his hands raw, cleaning filters in a sewage plant. He slept in a crawl space. The people here, with nothing and nowhere to go, they're not all gangsters and criminals. You think my brother, the best man I know, deserves to be shot and thrown over the side like a piece of trash?" Turk's eyes softened slightly at his words. She broke eye contact, relaxing her posture. All right, I was just talking shit," she shrugged. "No shade on your bro. I'll buy the first round. Peace." The dark-skinned woman extended her hand, clearly uncomfortable. Anik exhaled, letting out his anger. He grasped her hand, shaking it. "Peace. We're drinking soju, though." "Soju?" Turk grimaced. "Too sweet for me, but whatever you babies want." The tension broken, the new platform security operatives lapsed into mild conversation, their eyes drinking in the vast platform city as it swallowed them deeper inside its steel and neon mass. The tram spun through the metropolis at breakneck speed, mag brakes shrieking at every corner. A soft patter from above. Polluted rain had begun to fall in earnest from the smoke-choked skies. The tram sped from station to station, commuters boarding and exiting, bringing in with them the wet humidity of the outside. The new recruits were soon sweating in the oppressive sauna of the tram carriage, each trying to avoid standing in the ever-widening puddles of rainwater. Finally, the hollow display above the tram doors signaled their destination, Kaifu, North Turnline. Chattering with banter, the five companions exited the carriage, allowing themselves to be carried out of the station by the flow of sweaty traffic. Pascal Jr.'s face shimmered in the rain, the hollow advertisement struggling to maintain its facade.
"For a better you, Pascal Real Estate."
His voice echoed out across the emptiness between mega apartment blocks. Beneath the hollow advertisement, on the damp rooftop of a low-rise apartment building, Luo Xian waited, motionless and impassive as a statue. He held an umbrella in one hand, sheltering his body from the corrosive rain. Dark glasses covered his eyes, a silver-grey beard hemming a stern and unsmiling mouth. "Sir." Mandarin, a voice from the gloom, female. Wen Lanfen approached, making sure to keep both of her hands open and visible at her sides. The lapdog hated surprises.
"Late."
Xian tapped at his wrist, despite there being no watch there. "My apologies, sir." Lanfen bowed slightly, her long dark hair spilling over her shoulders.
"Give your report, Operative Wen."
Xian removed his glasses, his implanted eyes unblinking and utterly unnerving. The agent swallowed. The lapdog was viewing her vitals. Deep breaths. First, she needed to tell him what he already knew. "The prototype is missing. We believe a local gang, the Sherpas, are responsible." Xian did not so much as twitch. Wen continued. "I used an asset within E1CE to track the gang's movements within the city. I believe
I do not like this word. Believe. What is the margin of error?"
Wen blinked, raindrops matting her silicon thread eyelashes. "Low. Near zero." Xian nodded ever so slightly.
"How will you retrieve it?"
My team." Wen caught the slightest flicker of movement, biomechanical eyes twitching. "No. I am linked to the lapdog, and he is linked to the chairwoman. None of this can come back to her. That was fine. There were others who could dirty their hands in her stead. In fact, she had already planned for this exact eventuality, moving pawns about behind Xian's back, just as he had taught her to. I will manipulate local law enforcement into fetching the prototype for us. She changed tack.
That seems wise. Who and how?
One Sergeant Jenny Azul and her squad. Task Force Tsunami. Everything is already in place.
You have utilized E1CE assets without my consent.
My deepest apologies. Time was of the essence. There was no way to know how long the prototype would remain in the Sherpa's hand. Xian waved a hand, and a screech of harsh static burned at Wen's temples. She clamped shut her lips.
This Azul, is she reliable?
The lapdog asked. Yes. She seems hard-working and loyal to E1CE, though otherwise unexceptional.
Loyal?
Xian mused. Sensing he was waiting for her to continue, Wen kept going. Platform security will raid the target location, the cover story being a high-profile drug bust. They will do the heavy lifting for us and retrieve the prototype without direct PT involvement ever being suspected. Rain fell upon her exposed hair and neck, chilling her skin, small shivers running down Wen's spine despite the humidity. The lapdog seemed neither pleased nor displeased, his lips pursing ever so slightly.
Call Chang with my authority. He will be useful,
he commanded. Understood, sir. Wen bowed and made as if to leave, but Xian raised a hand.
Can you handle this, little mouse?
The lapdog's words were projected into the female agent's mind, Xian's superior PT credentials overriding all of Wen's synthlobe firewalls. She trembled, feeling tears in her eyes at the intrusion, sudden and uninvited. Yes, sir. I will not fail. Even her internal voice was shaken and faltering. Xian smiled.
Good.
His normal voice again.
Go.
Wen needed no second bidding. She bowed quickly and turned on her heels, desperately trying to hide the fact that she was biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. Fucker! Fucker! She hated the feeling of him inside her mind. Poking, prying, those grey bioplastic eyes unblinking as he saw through her skin. Wen pulled out her device and interfaced with it, connecting with the contact label simply as Chang.
What is it?
He answered immediately, despite the late hour, his voice quiet and raspy. A mission. I need you in the steelworks. Get us a nest with surveillance gear and weapons. Wen heard nothing on the other end of the line, saved for a slow and measured breath. Then the connection was cut with a soft click. She pocketed her device and made for the stairs, running her slender fingers through long, damp hair as she descended. It was time to get what sleep she was able to muster before Jenny Azul made her move. Seated in a dimly lit bar not far from the tram station, Brass belched softly, rubbing his eyes with mounting tiredness, already 3 drinks deep. He sat pressed between Monk and Kumari in a small booth not far from the register. The Korean bartender had eyed them curiously upon entry, but was now reclined by the taps, watching news snippets on the wall display. The brothel across the road is clean, and there's a discount for badges. I'll introduce you to the mama. It was Zahir, Anik's brother, speaking to Turk and Monk. Taller and pudgier than his lean and muscular sibling, Zahir was clearly living the good life. His clothes were new and vibrantly colored, and his device was current gen. Brass could also make out several smooth rivets in his skull, mostly hidden by his fringe, but not entirely. An implant, possibly even a synthlobe. Zahir had money, that much was certain. But how had he made it? The man had spoken nothing of his occupation. An undocumented immigrant, now flush with bits and secretive about his work. Brass knew what was likely on the mind of everyone there. Zahir was dirty. Maybe I'll spend my 1,000 bits there, eh, Anik? Monk grinned. It's a draw, soldier boy. You got sent to fight the gangs, but guess what I'm doing? The Indian patroller smiled back. That's right, corpo security. You're full of shit, you are. Ha! How about you, Turk? Zahir turned instead to the dark-skinned woman. Want to see why Kaifu never sleeps? Not tonight, my man. Turk, pink-cheeked and sweating, quaffed a shot of clear liquor. Our bitch sergeant wants us in E1C HQ bright and early tomorrow. He rides you hard. Next time, then. Zahir raised his glass, whiskey and ice, to the platform beneath our feet and to the new friends who stand upon it. Everyone raised their drinks except for Brass, whose glass was empty. Monk sat down heavily, less composed than usual. Brass, you were a drug pusher? His question was quiet, aimed only at the smaller man seated next to him, but Kumari's eyes perked up too. Brass flushed, unprepared to answer. No, not a pusher. I was just doing my job. Fuck. He slurred, slamming a fist against the table. The newness of E1 had relegated the grim reality of his situation to the back of his mind, but now it returned, no less terrible than it had been before he boarded the Batak. Monk raised an eyebrow, and Kumari called out to the barkeep. Excuse me, sir. Might we have some water? The Korean server simply pointed outside at the rainy night streets of Kaifu. Water is not free. Open your mouth out there or show me your bits. Turk and Zahir chortled at his words. Savage, Kumari muttered to himself, raising his device. The bartender pinged it remotely before bringing over a plastic bottle of water and placing it unceremoniously in front of Brass. Anik, re-zipping his fly as he returned from the bathroom, seated himself next to Turk and draped an arm across her shoulders, their earlier animosity clearly forgotten. Drink. Monk uncapped the bottle and helped Brass to gulp from it. The scrawny chemist, water dribbling down his chin, was close to tears. I didn't want to do it. My lab wasn't meeting quotas. The supervisor said no one would know, we'd just be making generic stimulants and selling them through a subsidiary. It was all above board, no risk. The other recruits and Zahir were silently listening now. Brass took another swig of water and continued. Of course it escalated. Of course it did. First it was generic stims, then brain numbers, aphrodisiacs, nerve trank, you name it. I was in too deep, and what could I do? Say no? If I did, they'd find another, and good luck me finding a new job with stim chemist, burning a hole in my resume. I was fucked the moment I made that first batch. But you did say no eventually, didn't you? Monk asked quietly. That's why you're here. Brass snorted with fatalistic mirth and nodded. That's why I'm here. E1CE offered to pay my contract severance penalties and remove me from Tiedemann Holdings before any legal action could be taken. I could never return. Brass went quiet, and Monk patted the chemist kindly on the shoulder. I killed a murdering psychopath with my grav bike. I was supposed to arrest him, but I popped the fucker instead. That's why I'm here. Turk broke the tension, tapping her empty glass on the table. Anik, I'm empty. I got the first round. Big bro's got this one. Anik pulled Turk in closer, but the dark-skinned woman jabbed him hard in the gut with an elbow. The Indian patroller wheezed with laughter and pain. Let's take a screen snap. Something to remember your first night in E1 by. Zahir stumbled to his feet, a device in one slightly swaying hand. He raised 3 fingers and counted down. 3, 2, 1! Flash! Brass squinted, barely aware of what had just happened. Don't think I've forgotten about that next round. Turk poked Anik's brother playfully in the side with a finger. Fine. Zahir groaned, palming the device back to Anik. Thought your boss wanted you up and early, biker girl. What for? What's so important? Turk grinned and opened her mouth to reply, but Monk interrupted. Classified. You should know better than to ask us that. His eyes were unfriendly. And you, Turk, keep your drunk mouth shut. Turk scowled, and Zahir raised his hands innocently. Hey, no harm intended. I'm off to get more wine for the lady. He tottered away, swaying. What's up your crease, skinhead? Turk's lip curled back derisively. Your flapping lips. You know why we were chosen. And here you are giving mission details to a total stranger. He's good. We can trust my bro. Anik flashed his white teeth, trying to lighten the mood. I don't trust you either, Monk added. You're not one of us. What's that supposed to mean? I'm a badge too, look! Anik pulled open his jacket, revealing his carbon steel insignia. I arrived on the same bloody batak as you. Monk's face was expressionless. He patted Brass on the shoulder, getting his attention. Brass, time to go. Let's split a SAR cab. Me too. I'm ready to retire for the night. Kamari rose to his feet, stretching. The Sri Lankan had barely touched his drink. Monk nodded at him before firmly grasping the chemist's shoulders and directing him towards the exit. The three men pulled up their hoods before disappearing into the rain-soaked crowds beyond. Turk and Anik stared at each other in exasperation. See, that's what I'm working with. Turk exhaled, rolling up his sleeves. Zahir reappeared at her back, carrying 3 glasses brimming with dark liquid. I got something a little stronger this time, he chuckled. Good. Turk grabbed her drink from him before he could place it on the table, downing it in a single swig. I want my first night on E1 to fucking burn! Cheers to that. The Indian patrolman raised his own drink, clinking it against his brother's. Outside, rain pelted down unrelentingly, though barely denting the numbers of pleasure-seekers flowing down the streets of Kaifu. Through the human tide swam Shinsenkaku gangsters, untouchable eels that the crowd parted around. Brass, Monk, and Kumari were forced towards the tram station by the dense, living traffic, their platform security uniforms offering them little respect or extra breathing room. Brushing past a trio of gang hustlers, Brass locked eyes with a man, Japanese or perhaps Korean, his eye implants an unsettling red, and vents carved into his cheeks, spilling forth vapor fumes. Watch your pockets, Kamari yelled over the nightlife cacophony. Monk pulled Brass by the arm, breaking the stare between the chemist and the red-eyed Yakuzite. The trio forced their way to an autocar docking station, Monk swiping his device to request a SAR cab. The countdown began. 5 minutes. It will be faster. They always bloat the numbers to encourage people to pay for the premium service. Kumari adjusted his hood, rain streaking down his face. The Sri Lankan reached into his breast pocket and retrieved a stick of numb gum from within, offering it to both Brass and Monk. They both accepted. My knee, Monk said while chewing, tapping the joint with his fingers. I took a bullet while guarding a cobalt extractor. My hands. Kumari displayed his palms, rivulets and subdermal cables running from fingertips to wrist. Touchscreen acceleration implants. Faulty gen Kototech, not so easy to repair since they went under. Kumari and Monk looked at Brass expectantly. I just like gum, Brass muttered sheepishly. Monk snorted with mirth and Kumari sighed, rubbing a long-fingered hand across his forehead. I truly hope you know chemistry, my friend. The Sri Lankan's voice was dejected, but there was the slightest twinkle of humor in his eyes. Kumari, how did you end up here, if you don't mind me asking? Brass was curious. You seem more normal than the rest of us. No offense, Monk. None taken. The soldier leaned against the autocar request console, clearly eager to hear Kumari's answer. Well, I used to be an investigator back in Sri Lanka. I was part of a task force combating separatist terrorists who wanted the SAC to break ties with Big Corpo. Kamari chewed idly, his eyes staring off into the distance. I was making progress. We had a few big breaks. Many fingers were all pointing in the same direction. So I reported my findings to my commander, a good man, and he carried those findings up the chain. But his superiors didn't like the way the winds were blowing. My commander vanished overnight. My task force was dissolved. I learned that day to keep my mouth shut and my opinions to myself. When E1CE offered me a position, I was quick to take it. Shit never climbs back up an arse, does it? Monk scuffed his muddy boots, his expression dark. Jesus, Monk. Brass looked disgusted. The autocar is here. Kamari pointed upwards, shouting over the growl of the approaching light transport as a shadow fell overhead. The blocky metal and plastic vehicle slowly glided down from the rainy skies, its undercarriage dripping filthy rainwater onto the trio of soon-to-be passengers. With no regard for the milling pedestrians, it began to lower towards the asphalt road, forcing those in the way to scurry aside and clear space or be crushed beneath.
Passengers alight now!
An AI-generated voice boomed out as the auto doors slid open.
3 occupants. Destination, Fusion District, Barrick Campus North. This autocar will begin the journey in 5, 4.
Kamari, Monk, and Brass hurriedly clambered aboard, the doors closing promptly behind them. The autocar immediately reflared its thrusters, lifting slowly above the crowds of Kaifu. As soon as the asphalt was clear of obstruction, the space occupied by the transport vehicle was swamped once more with bustling feet, leaving no trace that it had ever even landed. Kaifu's neon-lit streets would remain packed and hungry until daybreak. The Shin Senkaku gangster's red eyes followed the departing craft as it trailed through the overcast night sky, disappearing into the darkness of night. He exhaled smoke through his cheek vents and motioned for his comrades to return to their patrol. With the badges gone, they had products to push and rivals to hustle. With a final glance to the skies, his glowing red eyes returned to the bustling streets of Kaifu. Close enough to see the landing pad lights of PT's Sky Trident, Azul gazed out across the empty ocean. She and Yusuf sat side by side in the Origin bar, among the clouds in one of Fusion's many skyscrapers. They were both drinking idly while staring out over the midnight vista. Azul, still in uniform, nursed her drink absent-mindedly, while the plain-clothed Yusuf drew from a cigarette, letting the smoke coil around his fingertips.
How are they?
He asked simply, watching rain streak trails down the window pane. Too early to tell. Azul took the lit cigarette from Yusuf's offered fingers and drew from it. A few of them show promise, but there's only so much I can figure out from one debriefing and personnel files.
True enough. What are your thoughts so far?
About the recruits?
About the mission?
Yusuf turned from the window to face her, his eyes serious.
It's fucking lunacy, Yusuf.
Azul dug her nails into her palm, angrily burning her throat with a heavy drag of smoke.
What are 5 recruits going to do against the gangs? Hell, even against just the Sherpas. I could have all 5 of them mowing down Raja's foot soldiers dawn till dusk, and he'd recruit so fast the next day that it wouldn't even have made a dent.
Yusuf sipped at his drink, considering his words carefully.
Is that what you will do, Azul? Bloody E1CE's enemies until your men are spent, and Chopra's patience is exhausted?
He asked, knowing well that Azul would bristle at his words. The two had worked together for 3 years now, and there had been more than a few heated disagreements in that time.
Of course not, moron.
I won't throw away my first real command, even if it is just a token task force to convince Pac we're doing something about the gangs. Azul's reaction was less extreme than Yusuf had expected.
I don't think we're seeing the whole picture here.
The African captain retrieved the smoke from Azul's fingers. Let's review the situation. What do we know? Pac probably wants a win before the election. The corpos won't keep investing in E1 while gangs operate so freely, right under our nose, Azul replied impatiently. Yusuf nodded. That's true. But is this task force the win she needs? Azul went silent, drumming her fingertips on the real wood table. No, it's not enough, she stated, after coming to some kind of conclusion. We're too small to make the kind of difference she needs. I came to the same conclusion, Yusuf smiled. As I said, we're not seeing the whole picture. Why Task Force Tsunami? And why now? Why are the Sherpas the focus, and not Barracuda or Shinsenkaku? Azul frowned, thinking. And why raid the shitty little stash house in the steelworks? She mused, mainly to herself. Why would Chopra care about it enough to give the order personally? Yusuf opened his mouth to reply, but Azul waved away his words, pulling out her device. She sent out a line, waited a few moments, then the call was accepted. A gruff and clearly reluctant voice started to speak, but the sergeant was all business. Sato, I know you're not at the dormitories. I've got a job for you. Muttered protests. Azul ignored them. Gangsters can't be choosers, can they? Consider this part of your community service. Silence. Angry silence. Get to the steelworks. I want round-the-clock surveillance on the stash house. No, I will not use a drone. Why you? Do I even need to say it? Your time with the Kakus is why. This is not a request. Would you rather be serving out your sentence in the fresh air or medicated in deep freeze? Oh wait, that's right. You were on death row. Shouldn't a thank you be in order? Sato exchanged some choice, unrepeatable words with his commander, and Azul smirked, finishing off her drink. Steelworks, now! Don't bother coming in for the morning briefing. I want you there, keeping watch until the raid. The call ended, and Azul turned to Yusuf, batting her eyelids. Captain Yusuf? Her tone was infuriatingly coquettish. Yusuf groaned, mashing out the cigarette in an ashtray. What do you want? Find out how Chopra got the tip-off about the stash house. He said there was an informant but nothing else. Pretty please. Azul leaned in closer, her chin brushing against Yusuf's shoulder. You're only nice to me when you want me to do something stupid, Bambeleza, he grumbled through gritted teeth. And you only use Swahili when my charm is working, Njumba. Don't call me that. I'll find your informant. But after that, what happens next falls on you. Yusuf rose to his feet, tall and straight-backed. Azul smirked up at him, clutching his cigarette case in one hand. The captain patted his chest pocket. Empty. Pickpocket. I should arrest you. Try it next time, when you're in uniform. Bring handcuffs. She pulled out a fresh stick and lit it. Outside the window, acidic rain fell in sheets upon great steel and glass spires. The summer air was humid and cloying even at the toll of midnight, though here, between the shining skyscrapers of E1, night was ever banished by floodlight and hollow advertisement, glowing brightly until the rising of the sun. Sato stepped down from the autocar, his feet making contact with the damp asphalt of the steelworks district. A tight black mask covered his nose and mouth, and chem goggles protected his eyes from the acrid air. Unlike the glitzy thoroughfares of the Fusion, the buildings and streets bled together in an uninspired wash of grey and rust brown. Hollow advertisements for rebreather masks and immunoboosters flashed above, reflected on the low-rise windows, each covered with heavy blackout curtains and chem filters. The Japanese recruit noticed gang tags laser tagged across wall and concrete. A swimming fish, sharpened teeth bared to strike. Barracuda territory. Why were the Sherpas stashing their supply here? A question for another time, as Sato had more pressing matters to attend to. His gloved left hand traced beneath his heavy lead-lined overcoat, feeling the shape and weight of his sidearm hidden from view. Sato, for obvious reasons, was not dressed in his platform security uniform. He did not wish to be fished out of the ocean by organ harvesters, hoping to make a quick few bits. The Japanese operative had directed the autocar to descend a few blocks away from the stash house, knowing that landing nearby would be sure to draw attention. The Sherpas will have a lookout watching over their product. Find the nest, take it over. That was the plan. While in flight, he had pored over aerial maps of the area on his device, careful eyes missing nothing. A concrete apartment building stood directly alongside the stash house, but that meant that it would not provide direct vantage of the entrance itself. None of the buildings directly adjacent to the target seemed suitable either. One was a derelict one-story slum, the other a heavily fortified corpo truck depot. Ping and Tuan would not be harboring a gang lookout on their property. Besides, it was too low to offer a strong vantage of the various angles of approach. Where then? He widened his search to the next block and immediately stopped. Directly behind the truck depot sat a medium-height condo complex, once eggshell white, now coated in soot and scarred by acid rain. From its upper floors it offered excellent views of the streets below, including the stash house main entrance. Sato widened his search to consider all other possibilities, but his attention quickly returned to the condo tower. It was by far the best option. That's where I would hunker down. Satisfied, he checked his sidearm again, a 30-round T&D Schweigen C7. Short, snub-nosed, with a built-in suppressor, it was quick to draw and scarcely louder than the bolts of an apartment auto door. He also carried a rifle scope, detached from its rail. It offered both thermal and low-light vision, and would be perfect for detecting a sniper nest or hidden vantage point. Sato thought for a moment, idling in the deserted alleyway while he considered his best move. Azul had ordered him to watch, not to interfere, but skulking in wait had never been Sato's style. Besides, the longer he stayed, the higher the chance of drawing the Sherpa's attention. His best bet was to kill any observers, hack their comms and maintain cover, feeding information to Task Force Tsunami in the meantime. It might stir up the hornet's nest, especially if he was unable to do the deed quietly. But what was it Azul had said back at the debriefing? The gloves are off. If the drug slingers in the stash house were spooked, it would force E1CE's hand into acting more quickly. Sato smiled to himself. Azul would hate that. All the more reason to do it. That's the plan then. After a moment's consideration, he decided to make his way to the apartment block directly besides the stash house, and use it as a vantage point to scope out the condo block where the lookout was likely concealed. He tucked his gloved hands into his pockets, raising his collar to cover his masked lower face, and began to stride towards his destination. Very little foot traffic passed him as he walked, the task force recruit keeping a purposeful but unhurried gait, like a security watchman returning to his post from a coffee break. Trucks and loaders thundered past, running back and forth between the commercial docks and the great manufactories. There were no stores or restaurants anywhere in sight, simply row upon row of soot-stained warehouses and budget apartment blocks, all in states of serious disrepair. The fierce eyes of the Barracuda tag met Sato at every junction, an infectious rash spreading across the steelworks district. Despite their markings, the Japanese man did not see a single Barracuda gang member present. He could only assume they were watching unseen from behind the heavy blackout curtains above. After a brisk stroll, Sato turned right onto the street occupied by the stash house. Without pausing, he moved directly towards the next apartment block. He did not so much as glance at the building that would soon be the target of his task force's raid. Ducking inside the apartment foyer, he made his way to the security door. It was locked with a heavy metal gate, but that barely impeded the Japanese recruit, who drew his sidearm and blasted a hole through the mechanism, shouldering the now sparking obstruction aside. Such rudimentary security countermeasures were meant purely as a deterrence, and were usually not even connected to any form of alert system. Just to be sure, Sato checked his device, scanning for nearby triggered alarm frequencies, but detected none. Content for now, he set off deeper into the apartment block, the black soles of his boots barely marking the layer of trodden filth thick upon what had once been a tiled floor. Abstaining from using the elevator, Sato smoothly and quickly padded up the stairwell, pausing at each of the 3 levels. He carefully examined the carpeted floor of each one, looking for grime buildup and heavy wear. On the first and second floors, each unit was preceded by a heavy black streak of sooty footsteps, evidence of regular inward and outward activity. On the third floor, however, 2 apartments had relatively clean exteriors, indicating they were less used, or perhaps even unoccupied. One of the 2, Unit 303, faced northwards, which would not offer Sato a decent view of the street running in front of the stash house, leaving him with but a single option: 301. He knelt by the door of his target, reaching behind his high collar and inside his left ear. Finding a small plastic object embedded within, he withdrew it, an auditory enhancement device. Removing it revealed a cable connecting the device to his inner ear. Sato extended the cable as far as it was able, before pressing the device against the cold metal door of Unit 301. He calmed his breathing and focused his entire attention on the act of listening. No thought, no movement. In a near meditative state, the agent's eyes were glassy still, the expansions and retractions of his chest minute and barely perceivable. He remained this way for nearly 30 seconds before pressing a release on the listening device, which automatically spooled back into place inside his ear. Nothing. Silence. Sato reached into his chest pocket and withdrew a lock-picking tool. The door's auto-bolt did not pose much of a challenge, and a soft click announced that the apartment's last line of defense had fallen. Sato stood and stretched his aching knees after crouching for so long, before pushing open the door and treading inside, removing his shoes after crossing the threshold. By force of habit, he neatly arranged his footwear in a small locker by the door. Now in his socks, he adjusted his gloves and searched the wall nearest to the doorway for the wattage regulator and breakers. Finding them in the gloom, he used his device to check the recent usage. Nothing for 3 weeks. Vacant. Breathing a sigh of relief, he locked the door behind him and proceeded further inside, his device illuminating the way. While he was certain that the residence was unoccupied, he stepped lightly so as to not create audible footsteps for the apartments below. Someone was bound to notice the broken security gate in the foyer sooner or later, so it was better for the residents to simply believe it to be a half-hearted robbery attempt, rather than something more complicated. Leaving the entrance, he padded into the living room and walk-in kitchenette. His plan had been to open a small hole in the blackout curtains and scout out the apartment opposite the stash house with his scope, in search of a possible sentry position. Instead, his eyes widened with shock. The living space was filled with surveillance equipment. A currently unused spy drone sat charging on a portable mounting station alongside a top-of-the-line marksman's rifle. This is no ganger nest. It dawned on the Japanese recruit too late, and as he reached for his sidearm, a single shot rang out. Sato blinked, a tight pressure in his forehead causing his brows to twitch spasmodically. He slumped down onto the dusty carpet, blood pouring from the bullet wound between his eyes. From the shadows of the kitchenette, Wen Lan Fen disengaged her optical camouflage, her face white with terror.
Fuck!